My daughter has been encouraging my wife to divorce me and move on with her life. I was planning to get revenge on both of them. Life is full of ups and downs. It's funny how men are taught to be strong and tough, but when you decide to unleash your toughness, society will call you a heartless man. I know a lot of people who have been through similar situations. I know you're going to judge, but I'm still going to share my story so that no man out there will ever have to go through what I went through. I don't even know where to start. My daughter encouraged my wife to divorce me and move on with her lover, but I made sure I dealt with both of them. I planned a big revenge. I got the last laugh, and I'm proud of it. Can you imagine your own daughter and only child standing against you and supporting her mother to divorce you? I've been there, and it's a horrible situation. I'm glad I didn't let my wife and daughter ruin me. Instead, I ended up ruining their lives. I know a lot of you will call me a heartless man, but I honestly don't care. Wait until you've experienced half of what I've been through before you call me names. For the sake of privacy and my desire to not reveal my identity, I'll be using fake names. My name is Stanley. I'm a 40-year-old. I'm 40 years old. My wife's name is Annabelle. She's 35. We got married 15 years ago and have a daughter, Stacy, who is 14. Annabelle and I met 20 years ago in our first year at college. It wasn't love at first sight because Annabelle was my then-girlfriend's friend. My then-girlfriend cheated on me, but I didn't catch her. It was Annabelle who told me about it. I didn't confront my then-girlfriend, I just broke up with her. That's how me and Annabelle began dating. I was really angry at my then-girlfriend for cheating on me, so I was using Annabelle to get back at her. That's how Annabelle got pregnant in our final year in college, and I ended up marrying her. She said she'd lost the baby 1 month after our wedding, but I don't believe her. I don't think she was ever pregnant in the first place. I think she did it to trap me, but over the years I grew to love her, and I was there for her. I was there for my wife, physically, emotionally, and in all aspects despite my busy schedule. When our daughter Stacy was born, I opened a big jewelry store for her and bought most of our properties in my wife's and daughter's name. It was a mistake. Stacy was always close with Annabelle. People often say daughters are daddy's girls, but in my case it wasn't. Stacy was closer to her mother than me. I was around, despite my busy schedule, and I still made sure she never lacked anything. I made time for my family. We went out for fun activities almost every week. I noticed that Stacy preferred her mom's company to mine initially. I thought it was just typical teenage behavior, but I was wrong. I'm a loving person, but also very strict. I love my daughter, but I was very strict with her. I made sure she wore age-appropriate clothes and limited her screen time so she could concentrate on her schoolwork and physical activities. Annabelle was the opposite. Annabelle basically ruined our little girl's childhood, exposing her to a lot of things I wouldn't have allowed, like adult magazines. Annabelle let her dress however she wanted and gave her loads of screen time, so she preferred her mom to me and always looked forward to days when I wasn't home so she could have total freedom. I still don't understand why Annabelle was so overindulgent with our daughter. She was always trying to be on her good side, which made me question why she was spoiling Stacy so much. She always said Stacy was her only child. That's how our daughter became an unruly teenager throughout our 15 years of marriage. I never suspected Annabelle was cheating. In fact, we made a promise to each other 10 years ago on our anniversary that we would never cheat on each other and that we would make our marriage work. So I never imagined that Annabelle would ever cheat on me. I started noticing things were off 6 months ago, so I took a month off work to try to understand what was going on at home. I'm really glad I did because I started to suspect Annabelle 6 months ago when I came back from a trip without warning. It was supposed to be I was on a 1-month trip, but it was cut short due to some unforeseen issues. I arrived to find the house empty. I wanted to surprise my wife and daughter, but I was the one who got surprised. I didn't meet anyone at home when I arrived. I waited until evening to make any move because I initially thought they went out for grocery shopping or were out for fun. After waiting for hours without any sight of them, I called Annabelle and pretended like I was still on my trip. I asked if she was at home, and she said yes. I requested we do a video call because I wanted to. She told me our daughter was already asleep in her room, and she wouldn't want to disturb her. That's when I started to suspect something was up. I told her I would love to see her face, as I have missed her a lot. Annabelle got defensive and started questioning whether I started to doubt her. She got defensive. I told her I was at home and wanted to surprise her and Stacy. Then she told me she was at her parents' place and didn't want to bother her. She sounded pretty sure of herself, but I played along. The following morning she came as early as 6 a.m. By that point, I was pretty sure something was up. We live in Los Angeles, and her parents are in Chicago, so I was surprised at how quickly she got here. The next day, she apologized for not telling me she was going to her parents' place earlier, and I acted like I was fine with it. I took some time off work to figure out what was going on. One day, while Annabelle was asleep, I looked through her phone and found her messages folder, and WhatsApp messages were empty. I couldn't believe it because Annabelle was always on her phone, and I couldn't access it. I hired a private detective to follow her and report back to me. That's how I found out about the woman I was married to. The detective always reports her movements every day. Annabelle would dress up and tell me she was going to her jewelry store, but the private detective said she went to a hotel. He had proof she was always changing hotels every day, expensive hotels. After putting all my findings together, I discovered my beloved wife was cheating on me, not with one person but with numerous guys. I was shocked and hurt at first, but after a while, I decided to accept my situation and move on. The worst part of this betrayal was that my daughter Stacy was involved. She usually joins me on these visits to hotels while I'm busy with my boyfriend. Stacy waits at the hotel reception. I was angry at her for exposing our daughter to such a lifestyle at such a young age, but I decided to stay calm. I wanted to have evidence before doing anything. I also found out she spends my money on these guys, most of whom are unemployed and living on the streets. Some of them are even young enough to be her son. I was really hurt and angry. I can't believe the woman I've done so much for would turn around and hurt me this much. That's when I started regretting everything. I regretted ever marrying her. I had always assumed that Annabelle would repay me for all my help in getting her through school and setting her up in life. But she didn't. I decided to get my own back. One day, I told Annabelle I was going on a 1-month trip. I went on a month-long trip, and she acted sad as usual, saying she was going to miss me. I knew she was lying. I left the house and checked into a hotel nearby. I asked the private detectives to keep watching the house and let me know if they saw anything suspicious. It didn't take long. Hi guys, I'm back to give you an update on what happened. 2 days after I left the house, the private detectives I hired told me there was a young man at my home. I waited until the following day to make sure my daughter was in school. I forgot to tell you that I'd installed a CCTV camera in our living room and bedroom while I was away. I was monitoring what was happening when I saw my wife and her lover were already naked and intimate. I stormed the house, and Annabelle was shocked when I arrived. She had to clean her eyes 3 times. Maybe she thought she was dreaming. She jumped up and started shedding crocodile tears and told me she could explain and that I shouldn't jump to conclusions. I've come to the conclusion that women are funny. It seems that Annabelle was busy pleading with her lover, who quickly put his clothes back on and tried to escape. Unfortunately for him, I caught him and gave him a beating that he'll never forget. I gave Annabelle 3 slaps and pushed her out. I also threw her things out. At that point, I was just asking why. Eventually, she opened her mouth and told me that loneliness was the reason she'd had an affair. She said she got bored, and that's why she cheated. I was confused because even though I wasn't around, I made sure we communicated 3 times a day, and I made sure to always be at home and spend time with my family whenever my job permitted. I was working for her and our daughter to be comfortable. By that point, she was spending the money on random guys. I didn't even know how to react. I was boiling inside, yet so calm. I didn't even know where the strength came from. I went inside, brought out all the designer clothes, shoes, and bags I bought for her, and burnt everything, even the ones she bought for herself. I burnt everything to ashes. As her valuables burned, her cries grew louder. The more she cried, the more I felt relieved. She knelt and pleaded for mercy, saying this was the first time she'd cheated on me. I told her it was too late. I said I'd suspected her from the day I returned home, but she'd been at her parents' place in Chicago. When I arrived the next morning, I told her everything, from hiring private detectives to follow her around to secretly installing CCTV cameras in our living room and bedroom. She was shocked to hear all this. In fact, she was too stunned to even utter a word. I was so furious that I almost started hitting her, but I held myself back. Honestly, it hurts. How can my so-called wife be cheating on me like this? I found out my wife was cheating and spending my hard-earned money. I worked hard for our money, while she was out there with other men. She even brought one of those guys home and slept with him in our bed. I couldn't believe it. I asked her to leave and never come back. She stayed outside crying and begging until our daughter Stacy arrived and told her everything. She advised her mother to divorce me and take half of my properties so she could move on and live her best life with her lover. I was surprised, guys. I couldn't believe my ears. I came out to meet them and asked her to repeat what she said. She audibly repeated it. I was shocked to hear that from a 14-year-old. Stacy, who is 14, told me that I never loved her and that she is never free to be herself whenever I'm around. She also told me that she is not proud of me as a father. I was too stunned to speak. It still stings up to this day hearing that from my own child. I never knew Stacy had become that disrespectful. I always excuse her tantrums for puberty, but seeing how she spoke to me that day made me realize my little girl was gone. I mean, I couldn't even recognize the person that was standing in front of me talking. I couldn't believe my eyes. How can a 14-year-old, the daughter I love so much, was spilling such nonsense? She even went as far as telling me that I was good for nothing and that her mom deserves better. She said I was too rigid for her liking and that I wasn't as cool as her mom. For a moment, I wanted the ground to open so it could just swallow me up. I was so angry that she could just carry on enjoying her life with her lover. Annabelle and Stacy parked their stuff outside my house and left. That was when I decided to teach the two of them a lesson. The following day, I sent divorce papers through to Annabelle through my lawyer. My lawyer wasn't sure about the divorce because all my properties were bought in Annabelle and Stacy's name, but I told him I had a good plan in motion. Annabelle called me after. When she got the divorce papers, she said she was ready to get divorced soon. The divorce proceedings started, but it wasn't as I'd expected. I refused to be distracted. The whole process wasn't as seamless as I'd imagined, but it was worth it. Our divorce was later finalized, and Annabelle got almost everything. We both got joint custody of our daughter, but I told Annabelle I wasn't interested in raising Stacy any longer. Since she is, I was already doing a good job at that. On the day we got divorced, Stacy was the most excited. She told me she was finally free from my unnecessary nagging. I don't blame her though. If only she knew what I had planned for her and her mother. That is how I lost my family, and all the things I have worked for years. After the divorce, I started with my plans to make Annabelle and Stacy cry. I made a plan with a young friend of mine, Alexander. I knew that Annabelle would fall for his tricks. He disguised himself as a realtor and a very rich young man. I gave him all the necessary information about Annabelle, where she could meet him, and how he should woo her. As expected, Annabelle fell for his trick. They started having an affair. Annabelle fell head over heels for him because, unlike her previous lover, Alexander was rich. Alexander was spending money on. Annabelle took her shop and went on expensive trips for 2 months. She felt safe, and that's when we struck. I drafted a business proposal about investing in real estate, which Alexander took to Annabelle. Unfortunately for us, she fell into our trap. The deal was very cheap, and only a greedy person would fall for that. Annabelle, being Annabelle, fell for it. She put all the property she got from me up for sale at a cheaper price. She was helped by my lawyers help me buy it back without her knowing. That's how I got all my properties back for next to nothing. Annabelle needed money, so she sold everything cheap, even her jewelry store. I bought it all and kept going with my plans. So Annabelle sold everything and gave Alexander the money. That's how she lost everything. She even borrowed money to make up for the amount she needed for the investment. Alexander brought the money to me as a gift. I paid him back. And that was the end of it. That was the beginning of Annabelle's downfall. It was a case of grace to grace, and that's how I got everything I lost back, with even some extra cash on the side. It felt good to finally give them a taste of their own medicine. That was the start of their nightmares. Annabelle soon became a shadow of herself. She tried calling me once, but I blocked her number. Stacy also started calling me out. It was a complete shock when they turned up unannounced. I'd never heard from them before. I blocked their numbers straight away. They were both struggling to make ends meet and ended up homeless. It was a big change from living in a mansion to being in a rented apartment and struggling to pay the rent. That's when Annabelle and Stacy came back to beg me. I can't remember the exact day, but I was shocked to see them. I wasn't surprised though. They both knelt down. I asked for forgiveness, but I refused and sent them away. I decided to go into the next stage of my plans. I hacked into Annabelle's Facebook account with the help of a friend and uploaded her numerous cheating videos. I was able to get them from the CCTV camera I secretly installed. Our close friends and family abused her to the point she had to deactivate her social media account. Some of them who weren't aware about our divorce called to I was happy to see her suffer. I felt good subjecting her to such embarrassment. She was so ashamed she couldn't move outside for days with her nude pictures flying online, no job and no money to pay rent. She moved in to go squat with her friend. Not just that, I stopped giving her parents the upkeep money I usually give them every month. I stopped sponsoring the brother in Harvard. I chased the parents out of the, I know a lot of you will say I'm heartless, but I don't care. I understand what I went through and I know what I invested in. I worked hard for Annabelle and our family, and I gave her and our daughter the very best. But what did I get in return? Betrayal. I don't care what you guys have to say. I wish I had listened to my parents when they asked me not to give in to pressure. Mary Annabelle said she was pregnant and wanted to get married. Annabelle and her parents pushed me to the point where I had to agree to marry her, even though my parents didn't want us to. My parents never supported our marriage, but they had to accept Annabelle as my wife. At first, I thought they were against the marriage because Annabelle wasn't from the same social background as us. But they told me there were. There was something about Annabelle that didn't seem quite right, and I had the feeling that people like her were gold diggers. I wish I'd listened to my gut, especially after my mom saw Annabelle shopping for expensive accessories during our wedding. My parents sponsored our wedding, and Annabelle took that liberty and ordered all the expensive stuff. I felt embarrassed, but I never read into it. I thought she was just excited. My wife's greediness continued into our marriage. I could provide for her, so I never complained. Looking back, I think I made the biggest sacrifice in our marriage. My wife never loved me. She saw me as just a ladder to climb. I'm glad I sent her back to the slum where she belongs. I found out the truth about my girlfriend from college after my divorce. She was my first love and my best friend. My friend and everything. I found out she never cheated on me. In fact, Annabelle planned the whole thing. Even the pregnancy was fake. She was never pregnant at that point. I felt used, but I'm happy I taught her a lesson she'd never forget in her lifetime. Although I found out the truth late, I'm still glad I finally got to know the truth. As for Stacy, my daughter, I couldn't just look away. She was still my daughter anyway. I took responsibility. I made sure she stayed with her mom and withdrew her from the expensive private school she was attending and enrolled her in a public school. I wanted to teach her a lesson and stopped giving her pocket money after my divorce with her mom. I also took her phones and gadgets and told her she would only have access to those things when she finally graduates from the top of her class. I also took away all the privileges she enjoyed before. She used to enjoy a lot of outings, but just school, no social activities and no shopping. I told her that I would withdraw any form of support from her if I didn't see any changes after 6 months. That's how I started seeing some changes in her. One day, she asked me to let her come and stay with me, as she wasn't comfortable living in a shared apartment with her mom and her mom's friend. She said she wasn't used to it. She was used to a certain lifestyle and was finding it hard to adjust. I told her it wasn't possible and that she would soon get used to it. It was my way of teaching her that the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and that all that glitters isn't always gold. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I hope someone out there learns something from my story. Don't be too soft as a man, and most importantly, avoid getting married to a gold digger. They will ruin your life.